Hello everyone, this is your teacher, Mr. Ricardo. For you boys, the lesson of this week is going to be maybe a bit longer, but it's going to be about the different resources that we have left, the other resources that are very important to our country. We're going to explore uh, some of the reasons why they are important and some of the conflicts that they may have. We're going to see a few examples of them, and that's about it. So before we begin, let's see the vocabulary.
Bueno chicos, en relación al vocabulario de la clase del día de hoy, es bien sencillo. Tenemos primero que nada la palabra displacement, que tiene que ver en el fondo con el desplazamiento de, en este caso vamos a hablar del hábitat y de los animales que se tienen que desplazar o ir de un hábitat a otro. The soil erosion, que es la erosión del suelo del lugar donde podemos plantar cosas. Overexploitation, que es la sobreexplotación. Probablemente esto hablar de la sobreexplotación de nuestros recursos naturales. Indigenous, que en el pasado lo hemos ocupado como indigenous people, pero en este caso son los indigenous elements that belong, o sea, los elementos idóneos que son parte de un territorio. En este caso vamos a trabajar los árboles. Plantations, que son las plantaciones, vamos a ver qué son específicamente las plantaciones. Toxic waste, que tiene que ver con los desechos tóxicos. Y finalmente, pollution, que es la polución. So the first thing we're going to see are the livestock resources, okay? So for the livestock resources, we need to understand that here in Chile, they are obtained from livestock farming, which is the farming of animals like cows, sheep, etc., horses. We have also the poultry farming, which is the farming of birds, and finally the one that can we see over here, which is the beekeeping, which is the farming of bees. As we see right here, this is the poultry farming, the farming of birds. They raise birds, and finally the raise of farm animals such as cows, sheep, horses, etc., which is the livestock farming. Okay, so let's continue. Moving on, livestock resources can also have other effects. So first of all, we're going to focus on the negative effects of the livestock resources or the livestock production in the end. First of all, the native species can experience some displacement or replacement. The meaning of this is that, for example, animals like pumas o other animals that live in some parts of the country, o sea, animales que viven en algunas partes de nuestro territorio, pumas, huemules, etc., they have to go, they have to leave, tienen que dejar, they have to leave their place so people can have the current space, so they have the livestock production, okay? Also, degradation of vegetation, soil erosion, or decrease on its fertility can also have conflicts with the soil. If we use the soil many times, is not going to be good for it, all right? It's going to be unable to be used again in the future, so that can happen also. And also the greenhouse gases, they can have or can be harmful to the environment. Now also it is important to know that we need animal welfare, which is the meaning of this. O sea, el cuidado apropiado de los animales en estos lugares donde tenemos nuestros recursos de livestock. First of all, the animal welfare, for example, we see a veterinary over here, is to prevent diseases, veterinary treatments, and also to handle animals correctly. Is to not to produce harm. O sea, no hay que herir a los animales a pesar de que están siendo usados en este punto para producir en el fondo diferentes tipos de recursos. Also, animals should be butchered in a compassionate way. O sea, cuando los animales son reducidos y en el fondo tienen que ser reducidos, hay que matarlos en el fondo para poder producir ciertas cosas, esto tiene que pasar de una manera compasiva, no tiene que ser a través de un abuso. Quickly, we're going to move to page 102 and let's focus on document 2 because we're going to take a look at the different animals and the different things they produce. For example, in document 2, we see llamas that produce wool, cows, milk or leather, cuero, chickens, eggs or meat. The pigs also produce meat as well. We have other animals like goats, o sea, las cabras, milk products, horses, the salt meat, o el mal llamado charqui, que supongo que más de alguno le debe gustar. We also have the sheep that produce wool, and in this place we see the bees that produce honey. Okay, if you have time, take a look at the map, because here is the map for all the different animals in which areas of the country they are farmed. All right. Now, forest resources. What can we say about forest resources? First of all, the forest resources refers to all the resources obtained from the forest. So everything that comes from the forest is a forest resource. Okay? Now, forestry is related to the different activities that are used to extract the forest resources, o sea, las cosas que ocupamos para extraer estos recursos de los bosques are called forestry. Okay, now forests fulfill many important purposes. O sea, so they are very important. Because of that, their deterioration due to overexploitation or forest fires, o sea, los incendios forestales, are very harmful. All right, so overexploitation of the forest and forest fires, we should not allow them because they are very harmful to our forest resources. Okay, so as we see over here, this person is taking care of one of the trees, and here is the controlled way in which they have to cut the trees. Now we're going to take a look at two different types of forest resources. First of all, we have forest, which are basically places where we see trees. Mostly they coexist with the herbs, fauna, and other microorganisms. So basically are places where the forest coexists with animals and other living things around. The native forest, this information is important, are mainly composed of species that are indigenous to the territory. So this is a species of trees or vegetation that belongs to a place, to a certain territory. O sea, es un tipo de vegetación o bosque que pertenece a un lugar en particular. Now, what is the difference? Because now we have plantations, and plantations are fast growing trees, so they grow very fast. They are non-native, they do not belong in one territory, o sea, no pertenecen solo a un lugar. They are introduced by humans. They are also created to supply the forest industry and are also used to reforest territories that don't have their natural vegetation. So whenever we see a place that don't have enough trees, they use plantations so we can have more trees. And also the plantations are used so we can continue cutting trees without a problem. Okay? Now, as we can see here on the book, on page 104, you can take attention over here because the, as we can see, the plantations of different forest resources are not, for example, in the far north, of course, neither in the near north. It's mostly on the central zone and also on the southern zone of the country. All right, as we see over here, there are plenty of more forests in those regions. Also, we can take a look at some of the functions, biodiversity and habitat for wildlife, which means that it's the place where the animals live. They stabilize the soil protection against erosion, also the temperatures, and they are used for material goods. Basically means that thanks to forests and usually plantations, we're able to have wood for construction, firewood, which is the wood that we use to burn so we can have a place, and wood pulp. Moving on, so we have now fishing resources. Now, the first thing we need to know about fishing resources is that Chile is one of the largest producers in the world in terms of fishing and aquaculture. Now, what is aquaculture? Aquaculture is very similar to agriculture or livestock production, but instead of plants or farm animals like cows, we raise fishes. All right. So and the fishes we use them for the second thing. They are used for direct consumption or raw materials in industrial production, which basically means that we direct consumption, we eat them, or we use them for industrial production, which can be used in many different ways. Now there is a catch. O sea, hay una cosa más. There is an environmental risk due to overexploitation. So if we use one species of fishes too much, or maybe a few species, they can become into a non-renewable resource. So we need to be very careful with the fish. O sea, si ocupamos mucho una especie en particular de pez, se pueden convertir en un recurso no renovable. As we saw before, we have the fisheries resources in Chile. You can take a look at the map at any time you want. This is on page 106, but we're going to focus on document 2, which is the industrial and artisanal extractive fishing, which are the two types of different fishing. First of all is carried out by artisanal fishermen, which are a group of people, usually by families, and the industrial fishing is usually done by big companies, all right? There are other differences. The fishing zone is the first 5 miles, so son las primeras 5 millas, but the fishing zone for the big companies are from 5 miles onward. O sea, lo que significa que son más de las 5 millas hacia adelante. And finally, along the country's coastline, there is a difference in which places they fish, because the artisanal fishing is concentrated into the central and the south zone, and industrial fishing is usually concentrated in the far and in the near north, is over here. Okay, so let's continue. So this is the big one for us, the mining resources, which first of all have a great historical importance. They are very important for us. They are Chile's main productive activity. They move the economy of our country. There are numerous mining resources, not only copper, as we know, there are metallic and non-metallic resources. And Chile is the largest copper producer in the world. Okay, that is very important. And as we see here, we have some of the Chuquicamata, I think this is this one. So as you see, we have some pictures of the mining resources. But the mining resources also sometimes bring negative effects, okay? For example, it says mining can have some negative impact. Gas and powder is released to the atmosphere. This can have a negative effect on the air we breathe, all right? Toxic waste, pollution, alterations on the soil. So it can have an impact on the soil if you are planting something, or if you have, let's say, the trees, etc. And also water contamination can be another big problem for the mining resources. It can also have sometimes negative effects on the population if the mining company is not on check. O sea, si las compañías mineras o si el efecto de esta minería no es llevado a cabo de manera responsable, puede tener efectos negativos. For the mining resources, as you can tell, they are concentrated not in the south, but in the north of Chile. As we already know, this activity is very, very often seen in this place. And also, I want you to take a look at here at the multiple things that are made, or the multiple properties that copper uses. If you can take a look in your book. And also, as you can see over here, also we have non-metallic materials, table salt, or sodium chloride, which basically is used by companies and industries to create other products, as we see over here: glass, soap, plastic, paper, paint, cosmetics, medication, among others. That is what the salt is used for. Finally, we have the energy resources, which are about the ones that give us energy that we use for many different activities: electricity, transportation, heat, domestic or industrial machines. For example, let's say you can use a television or electricity in your home, but this same energy is used, for example, in big companies, in big industries, etc. As we see over here, we have the fossil fuels. This is petroleum, and they are used for transportation, electricity, cooking, heat buildings, and water. Uh, Also, natural gas is used for some of these activities. Firewood, which is over here, is used for heat and cooking. And finally, we have the river water, which is used for hydroelectric power. So we have electricity thanks to this. But we not only have conventional energy, we have the non-conventional energy, which is usually eco-friendly, like the wind, solar, geothermal, biomass energy, and also hydroelectric power stations. Now, one of the things that can happen with the energy resources is that sometimes they can cause pollution that is released to the atmosphere, and also the construction of power stations can produce waste materials, and this also creates a conflict because some people don't want some power station, especially for example if you have a big place with lots of water, a big river, they don't want a power station near to a lake or a big river. Okay.
Bueno chicos, vamos terminando la clase el día de hoy. La clase de hoy más que nada tenía que ver con el fondo con mostrar cuáles son parte de los recursos naturales que tenemos a nuestra disposición, los diferentes tipos de energía, tanto que tienen que ver con el ganado, eh, con los recursos que vienen del mar, con los recursos energéticos de minería y también los que podemos encontrar en los bosques. Eh, Tener bien en consideración sobre todo cuáles son los conflictos que pueden generar en algunos casos, usualmente cuando están en zonas que son industrializadas, donde hay grandes compañías, o quizás la sobreexplotación de parte de estos recursos. Estos son los dos grandes conflictos que tienden a repetirse en distintos en estos distintos recursos que podemos ver a lo largo de nuestro país. Así que esa ha sido la clase de hoy, chiquillos. Un abrazo grande, que tengan un muy buen fin de semana y nos vemos próximamente. Chao.